My name is Bruce Hart. I'm at the SoyTuf manufacturing facility in Tucson, Arizona. The following video is on the SoyTuf stains. I'm going to show you why using a planetary sanding machine is better than a belt sander. What we have here is a planetary unit. As you can see by the video, we've got three heads that rotate in one direction, and the main plate is going to rotate in the opposite direction. One of the big advantages of this is you can go cross grain. You don't have to go with the grain of your wood. As you can see by the video, the size of the machine is also advantageous. This is a 25-inch versus an 8-inch belt sander, possibly a 12. Another key factor is this machine can be started and stopped on the wood floor. You don't have to lift it up like you would a standard belt sander because you're going to burn or scratch the floor. There's huge advantages to using this. Speed is going to be one of them. You can skip grits readily with this. You could start depending on what you're doing. This was obviously a brand new floor. We're not stripping the floor off, so it was rather simple to start low. We started at about 70 grit and ended at about 220. We've switched to a much smaller and lighter machine and put a maintenance pad. Actually, I've got a Scotch-Brite pad on this one-handed little buffer. It does a great job at cleaning, because that's all we're really trying to do is knock down any grain that may have gotten raised during the last process, and just cleaning the general sanding out. One thing that we didn't show in the video is we used a vacuum. You can see it in the back there, but we vacuumed it real good. But that doesn't always get every little bit out, because the next step is going to be putting the SoyStain down. So what we have here is a light duty. It is literally a one-handed machine. You're free to use a bigger swing machine, but we find in the house that the swing machines are just that. Unless you're real adept at using a swing machine, it'll swing into the walls, the doorways, anything. Whereas this machine literally can be used one-handed, and it does just a fine job. It's not a heavy-duty process, so you can get a couple of these going if you've got a large project. They're cheap, they're easy to operate, easy to transport, not necessary to use the planetary machine. Although you could, if you wanted to just keep it to one machine, you'd switch the sandpaper to, these are actually Scotch-Brite pads, but a Scotch-Brite pad is pretty much the same as what a lot of guys would call a maintenance pad. And we just go over it until we feel like it's clean. And you can touch it to see, but you want it super clean. This keeps from putting any liquid or anything else to remove. You know, a lot of guys will use tack rags to remove the dust. This does a great job because we vacuumed it. There's hardly any there, and it puts a little bit of a buff on it, a little bit of a shine to the wood, and knocks down any raised grain in preparation for the SoyStain. Okay, now that we have the floor prepped and cleaned, we're going to show you the procedure on how we stain the floor with the SoyStain. We're using the lightweight buffer in this process, and instead of the Scotch-Brite pad, we moved up to a thicker maintenance pad. And the reason for that would be that the maintenance pad, you could use the Scotch-Brite pad, but it won't hold as much SoyStain in it. This one will hold about 4 to 6 ounces, and typically what you'll do is you'll pour it through the backside, let it saturate in, mount it to the machine, and off you go. And what we like to do is have a couple of them in rotation. That way there you can keep non-stop staining the floor. Because after a little bit you'll run out of stain in the pad, and you need to move to the next pad. So what we'll usually do is have a second guy loading up the next pad and keep them in rotation. This is the easiest method to keep going, especially on a large project. This is only a 3-foot by 8-foot square that we did for demonstration purposes. So as you can appreciate, in a room, you want to keep the machine moving and going. And it's very easy to do. Again, you put it through the back side and let it saturate in the pad. Now the reason that we don't put it right on the floor itself, just dump it on the floor like you would typically with sealers or other types of stains, is because it'll splash. The machine this is a orbital sander, and it'll splash your feet, splash the walls, get all over creation. This method here just basically lets it out as it needs it. Okay, we've switched pads, loaded it up with another 4 to 6 ounces of SoyStain, and as you can see, it's still absorbing into the wood. It's making the wood a lot darker with the second pass. Once you keep going, both your pads should maintain a pretty dark and consistent saturation due to the fact that they're a little more broken in and a lot more stain in them. You can oversaturate the pad. If you put too much in, it's just like dumping it on the floor and it'll start splattering everywhere. You get the feel of it after you do it once or twice. It's not rocket science. It's relatively easy to do. Now, if you'll notice, in all the previous portions of the video, every bit of this we're doing in an upright standing position. This is huge. For anybody that's been in the industry any length of time, your knees are probably already shot. It just makes it so much easier with the equipment and the method that we've designed here for you to stand up. I mean, nobody wants to be on their hands and knees all day long while they're trying to stain and do their craft on the floor. We find that this method is just excellent for an all day long, especially when you get into larger projects. You don't want to be on your hands and knees, even though it may not be you, it might be your guys, but your guys are going to be a lot happier. The crew is just going to thank you at the end of the day for, you know, getting through this without being on their hands and knees. Those knee pads are brutal on the back sides of your knees. They save your knees, but the back side is typically always what hurts. But anyway, this is quite an improvement over previous methods. Okay, here's the final step. This again is a more modern method of applying the soy coat, which is our penetrating sealer. We also carry top coat sealers. They come in matte, satin, gloss. We find that typically nowadays most people are looking towards the matte or the semi-gloss. But if you'll notice, the method that we're going to use, it's not one we designed. We just picked it up on the internet. The roller that we use doesn't roll. It just more drags the sealer across the surface. And it's used with a T-bar and a T-bar coating. It's like a nylon foam applicator that's round. And what we're going to do is dump the sealer directly on the floor and then just drag it around. Now there's several styles of T-bars. For your penetrating sealers, you're going to use a heavy T-bar, which is going to be a little bit heavier. You don't have to put any pressure on it while you're doing the process, but you just drag it around and the weight of the T-bar kind of burnishes it into your substrate. On the lightweight T-bar, which would be used for our top coat sealers, that's going to allow the material to stay on the surface a little bit more and not burnish it in so much. They both work very effectively, very simple to use. You just want to keep once you get the floor saturated, you want to keep your T-bar ahead of the wet line, which basically means overlapping. And with this method, you can coat a room in short order. A 10 by 12 room can be done in 5 to 10 minutes. Now our products, by nature and the way we've designed them here, they really level themselves out quite well. So what you're going to see here is a milky white surface that may or may not have some streaks in it, but you don't need to worry about that. The white will turn absolutely clear, and because of the self-leveling properties we've designed into this material, they'll also level out all your streaks.